Welcome to the heart of the Yorkshire Dales. Today we are along my favourite stretch of the River Wharfe, and we're going to have a little bit of a look at some of the hidden ecology that you can see in these areas. Most specifically, I'm going to talk to you about the grasslands that we have along the River Wharfe here. Some of the grasslands along the River Wharfe, for example the ones near Yockenthwaite, are classed as a triple SI site, which is a site of special scientific interest. And they have been classified as such because of the massive species diversity that you have in these areas. The Yockenthwaite meadows specifically have been found to have up to 120 species in a single field, which is incredible. And as it is now September, we are getting towards a time of year when we're going to have the transitioning between summer and autumn. So I'm hoping we find a few of the last summer plants just clinging on, and then a few signs of autumn starting to come through during this walk as well. So as I said, I was hoping that we'd find some of the summer plants just clinging on still, and we've got our first one. This purpley pink flower here is a flowering head of the plant knapweed, which after flowering will go to seed pods like this. Also in this small area we have some lady's bedstraw, which would have a yellow flower if it was still in flower. We have some silverweed, we have creeping buttercup, we have clover, we have some germander speedwell. This is meadow sweet. And that was literally just at my feet. Now, what you really want to see when it comes to species diversity is indicator species. Different habitats will have a different number of indicator species that you need to have for it to classify as that habitat. So, for example, a meadow, you would need to find 4 meadow indicator species for it to be classified as one. Whereas a blanket bog, for example, on moorland, you would need 6 indicator species for it to be classified as a blanket bog. And this is a massive factor in the condition of these habitats. If you have the correct number of indicator species, then you are really, really likely to have a good condition habitat, which gives it a good chance of being put into the priority habitat index, which means there is a higher level of protection on it, and you're given a really good chance to conserve and improve that habitat. So different habitats will have different indicator species, and the indicator species present is often based on the soil type. So you can have acidic soils, neutral soils, or alkaline soils, or base-rich soils, they're sometimes called. And one of the interesting things about the ecology of the Yorkshire Dales is there is a lot of limestone here. So you're going to have species that favour this base-rich soil. That's not to say that there are no neutral or acidic soils here as well. There are definitely both of those. Now, there is a slight issue in my timing when it comes to having a look at the meadows. Obviously, it is no longer summer. All the grass has done the majority of its growth. And a lot of the meadows have actually been cut already. So this whole section of field has not been cut at all, I assume, given the fact that it's on a bit of a slope, bit of a gradient. So there are quite a few species in here that it's probably worth having a look at. Here we have another late flower. This is Escabious, and that bee is doing the exact job that I wanted it to, which is showcasing the importance of these flowers for pollinators this late in the season. This whole field is absolutely full of knapweed heads, and all of those will have provided food for the insects late in the season while everything else has died off. Although having said that, I have just spotted the flower of another plant down here. This little yellow flower is tormentil, and tormentil is actually one of the acid indicators. We also have some other plants here of note. This is the leaves of a burnet, and these are crosswort leaves. We also have some red clover leaves just here as well. So red clover and knapweed are 2 of the most common neutral grassland indicator species that I tend to see. That doesn't mean they exclusively grow on neutral grasslands. I mean, some of the other species in here, like that tormentil, for example, would indicate it is slightly acidic on this bank, which is what you tend to get on banks. But still, what they are both doing, and what every species in there is doing, is promoting the biodiversity within the habitat. The fact that we have multiple flower species that flower at different times of the year within just this one field provides a great food source for insects throughout the year. In turn, those insects provide a food source for birds. And then when all the flowers are past and you just get seeds, that in turn also provides more food for the birds. Just as I say that, I've just spotted another indicator species down here. So this is bird's foot trefoil or bird's foot trefoil, and these are its seed pods. Normally they would have a yellow flower on, a really interesting looking flower actually, so I'll show you it now. And that is another indicator species, again found just in this bank, and there's some more right here as well. So these yellow flowers that you can see here are hawkbits. There are two main types of hawkbits that I see on my surveys. There are rough hawkbits and autumn hawkbits. Again, both of which are acid indicators, giving more rise to the fact that that behind me is definitely an acid bank. Another indicator species in here as well. We once again have meadow sweet in here. So this is a nice, diverse, species-rich field. Just by standing here looking at it without knowing those species, to be honest, it just looks like a bit of a mess, particularly given the fact that the flowers have passed for the most part. But looking a little bit closer, just beneath the surface, you do get to get a really good idea of the ecology and the biodiversity just by stopping to have a bit of a longer look at some of these fields. Just wanted to talk quickly about bracken, as we can see at either side of the path now. Now, bracken is a bit of an interesting one. It is a native species. However, in a lot of places in this country, it does try to get controlled as if it were an invasive species. So bracken very, very quickly overtakes areas. I mean, you will have entire banks of it. In fact, there's one just up there. You'll have whole hillsides like that one there, just wall to wall bracken. And it is a bit of a problem. It does outcompete a lot. It has broad leaves. It's quite deep rooted, so it's difficult to get rid of. It's really, really good at blocking sunlight from getting to the more desirable plants that you find below it. It thrives in the uplands, it thrives in the lowlands, it thrives up hillsides, it thrives along rivers. It is pretty good at growing basically everywhere, but it is part of our native flora. It's part of the natural succession of a habitat. A lot of woodlands, for example, would have bracken in the understories, which would naturally be outcompeted over time by the trees growing above it and therefore blocking the light to the bracken as the bracken would block light to the ground flora. But because so much of the woodlands in this country have been cleared, so much of the hillsides are bare of trees, we've ended up in this situation where bracken has taken a bit of a hold. And again, it's not a bad thing that it's here. It is a native species. It should be here. It's part of our ecology. But the amount of areas it covers, that particularly areas that are like priority habitats, your acid grasslands, your moorlands, your calcareous grasslands, all of them can be impacted really, really heavily by bracken. The chemical that is or was used to control bracken is basically no longer available, and the other methods of control are pretty limited. You've got mechanical control, you can roll it, you can try get it grazed off or trampled with cattle, but I've seen it remain in areas for years and years and years and just spread continuously. So it is just yet another environmental challenge that we are facing in this country, and something that there is active management and control being done to halt the spread of bracken. And fingers crossed we start to see some results quite soon. Not sure how well you can see it, but there's quite a lot of sort of mizzly, drizzly rain coming in now. And I may have accidentally left my coat in the car, so I am actually already on the way back, which is fine. Obviously, I'll be back to the car sooner than later. And luckily, today's walk is a bit of a there and back anyway. It can be extended. It is actually a really nice extended walk, but I knew the rain was coming this afternoon, so I planned a bit of a short one, as it was. Been on my way back for a little bit now, but I've found a indicator species here that I missed on the way out. So have a little look at this. So these leaves here are the leaves of a plant called the Meadow vetchling. And what you can see, hopefully, on there is its vines have wrapped around the grass. So you'll often find fields that are used for meadowing are just absolutely full of intensive grasses that grow really quickly and are quite broad and are actually really good for feeding animals with. Now, don't get me wrong, that is not me criticising the fact that some farmers intensify their fields. As I said, it is very, very important that the stock are fed. However, when you have particularly species-rich areas like that, it would be a bit of a shame to see that lost. So I am very happy to say that the meadows along here are not treated like that and instead are actually celebrated for their species diversity. Now, I mentioned earlier that this is my favourite stretch of the River Wharfe, and it's areas like the one behind me now that is the reason for that. Just get a look at this properly. I absolutely love the layers of the rock you get creating all those mini waterfalls. And interestingly, you do actually get salmon up the River Wharfe as well. So it would be these areas like this that are perfect for salmon runs. Unfortunately, I've never actually seen them this high up the river before. I have seen them in other bits of the wharf, so I do know they are here. But I think the whole geology of this area, the way the river flows to create all these carves, these dips and dives in the rock, I think it is genuinely incredible. This place is one of my favourite places in the world to come. I mean, just look at it. I mean, areas like that are literally perfect on like a summer's day to come for a swim. Get into that pool there. It's just fantastic. And then alongside, we've got our areas like this with our knapweed on, our species-rich grasses. I mean, for someone like me as an ecologist, this is literally heaven on earth. So interestingly as well, obviously we are walking along the side of the river here, so you're going to have tree species that favour the wetter ground. And this behind me is an alder. So alder are one of the main 2 tree species that you're really looking out for if you're wanting to classify an area as being a wet woodland habitat. So you're really mainly looking for alder and willow. So the leaves of an alder look like this, and the seeds look like this. And the wet woodland is quite an important habitat, as is all of our native woodland here in the UK, as we have so little of it left. However, luckily, there are a lot of schemes going on currently to restore a lot of our native woodland. Lots of tree planting in areas that you can't really do much else with. So up hillsides, for example, where you can't really farm it, it's difficult for livestock. So let's cover it in trees again. And I'm hoping to see a lot more wet woodland back along our riverbank, because the alder is definitely one of my favourite tree species. So there you go, that's just a little bit about the wet woodland. And literally just downstream from the alder that I just showed you, there is a couple of willows going there. So if this was fully wooded all the way along the river, or there was patches of more dense woodland rather than just these sort of dotted trees the way along. So given the presence of alder and willow, if they were present at a high enough percentage, you would classify any bits of woodland along this stretch of river as being wet woodland, which obviously, given the proximity to the river, you would expect. So I had mentioned before about intensive grasses, and I mentioned ryegrass specifically as one of the most intense grasses that we have here in the UK. And by intensive, what I mean is it's intensive agriculture that promotes the growth of these species, because you want them to be fast growing, broad leaved, and pretty good at outcompeting other plants so that you get a high yield of these grasses to feed your animals with. So just here is the head of a ryegrass. Now, this field that I'm in now is not intensive by any means. Obviously, a mix of grass species can occur in any field. It's fields where it is just vast swathes of these intensive grasses. It's where you're going to find low ecological value, but a high grass yield. So yeah, thought I'd just show you that, as I've mentioned it before. The rain picked up quite a bit actually on my way back, so I made a bit of a dash back to the car now. But I do hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've enjoyed that section of the River Wharfe. And I hope you've enjoyed hearing a little bit about some of the ecology that you might not necessarily notice when you do walks like this. If you do find yourself wanting to come and try that section of the river, I am between Hubberholme and Yockenthwaite on the River Wharfe in Upper Wharfedale. It is a beautiful place. The river is fantastic up here. It's my favourite stretch of river by an absolute mile. If you were to come up, I would recommend coming up in the June, July time where you're at peak flowering season, or if you want to come up and see what I've seen today, seen the knapweed, seen the scabious, seen the hawkbits and the tormentil. You could come up at this time of year in the autumn. I'm up in September. But I do hope you have enjoyed, and I will see you on the next one.